is only after one is in trouble that one realizes how little sympathy and kindness there are in the world.
Nellie Bly, a young, fervent journalist of the 1800s, entered a world where kindness and sympathy were not known, and all that was left was anguish and misery. The year is 1887, and the city in New York is alive and bustling with activity. Nellie Bly began her journey in this very metropolis. She took it upon herself, at the age of 23, to set out for a job in journalism. In that day and age, men would scoff at a woman for trying to acquire a job in such a field. Working for the newspaper was a man's job, and a man's job only. Bly was determined to change this stereotype. After knocking on a countless amount of publishers' doors on Park Row asking, "What chance does a woman have in journalism?" she was finally noticed. The man that considered her for a job was Joseph Pulitzer, and he worked for The World, the best newspaper in its time. On September 22nd, Bly was asked by the World newspaper to commit herself to one of the asylums in New York. She was to report on everything about the asylum, including the conditions, the treatment of the patients, and the methods of management. Nellie was to hide nothing. In order to do this, she had to become Nellie Brown, the insane girl. She didn't know it at the time, but this exposé would be the milestone to her career and lasting legacy in journalism. This mission was far more precarious than anything any reporter has ever done. Blackwell's Island, just saying the name of this notorious asylum that Nellie would spend 10 nights at, brought a chill of terror down her spine. She had read stories of abuse in such institutions, but had disregarded them, thinking they were wildly exaggerated or else romances. She shuddered to think what she might have to experience during her stay. The only way to enter this asylum was if the person was considered insane.
September 24th, 1887. I came to a temporary home for women in New York City. Its address was building number 84 on 2nd Avenue. I passed through the little paved yard to the entrance of the home. I pulled the bell, which sounded loud enough for a church chime, and nervously awaited the opening of the door to the home, which I intended should ere long cast me forth and out upon the charity of the police. The door was thrown back with a vengeance, and a short, yellow-haired girl of some 13 summers stood before me. I stated my name as Nellie Brown, an immigrant from Cuba. As my stay progressed, I told the house matron of the voices I hear in my head. After she found me talking to myself numerous times, she sent me to Bellevue Hospital, where I hopefully would be declared insane.
Bly's plan was a success. The doctors all believed she was insane and was sent to Blackwell's Island Asylum. Nellie did not look upon doctors with the same respect anymore.
After this, I began to have a smaller regard for the ability of doctors than I ever had before, and a greater one for myself. I felt sure now that no doctor could tell whether people were insane or not, so long as the case was not violent.
When the doors opened, gargoyles adorning the stone walls, she realized that this exposé she was about to uncover would not come easy. She had to, and would, let the world know what really goes on in an asylum.
Asylums in the 1800s were looked upon with aversion. No one wanted anything to do with these hospitals. People did not accept the mentally ill, even though many patients were actually just as sane as you and I. Some women were sent to the madhouse because they were poor or could not speak English. A reporter from Harper Weekly, a former newspaper in New York City, wrote that Blackwell's Island was a clean and sanitary place for patients to live. Bly and all the other patients knew different. No one would ever know what it was truly like to live there, unless they saw it through their own eyes. Staring up at the spiral staircase, Bly knew that it must lead to none other than hell itself. She said,
"He who enters leaveth hope behind."
Nights within the walls of the asylum were unbearable. Nellie Bly kept a journal and a sketchbook during her stay. She was kept up during the night because the beds were impossible to sleep on, for they were as hard as a rock. She was also kept up due to the noise. Women's screams would echo throughout the hours of darkness. The nurses put the patients in unimaginable conditions. They beat and choked them, twisted their fingers, slapped them across the face, slammed their heads on the floor, drugged them, and made them go days on end with no food.
The attendants seemed to find amusement and pleasure in exciting the violent patients to do their worst. Take a perfectly sane and healthy woman, shut her up and make her sit up straight from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Do not allow her to talk or move during these hours. Give her nothing to read, let her know nothing of the world or its doings, and see how long it will take to make her insane.
Nellie's biggest realization of asylums was that, instead of making patients better, asylums actually made them worse. The concern for patients was terrible. They were not fed properly, clothed properly, or in any manner cared for properly. Nellie says,
I laughed at my own stupidity to think that nurses would work.
They did just the opposite. Nurses made Nellie's stay at Blackwell's Island worse than a nightmare. One of her worst memories was being given a bath. She wrote in a section of her journal about this.
The water was ice cold and I began to protest. My teeth chattered and my limbs were goose-fleshed and blue with cold. Suddenly, I got one after the other, 3 buckets of water over my head. Ice cold water, too, into my eyes, my ears, my nose, and my mouth. I think I experienced some of the sensations of a drowning person as they dragged me, gasping, shivering, quaking from the tub. For once, I did look insane.
After 10 whole days at Blackwell's Island, Nellie was finally rescued by a lawyer. This lawyer stated to the nurses that Nellie has not been insane at all and was in fact a journalist. After much protest with the nurses and the staff of the asylum, she was free to leave. Bly was extremely grateful to be able to go back to her normal high-class life, but also felt she had a duty to save the other women of the asylum.
I determined then and there that I would try by every means to make my mission of benefit to my suffering sisters, that I would show how they are committed without ample trial.
She put her experience into a book called 10 Days in the Madhouse. The book, with its graphic content and the conditions of the asylum, caused a sensation which led to Nellie Bly's lasting legacy in journalism. Her expose at the lunatic asylum started a new form of reporting called stunt reporting. Another common name for stunt reporting is investigative reporting, which is still popular today. As well as opening the eyes of the public, it also opened the eyes of the grand jury. They conducted an investigation of their own with the help of Bly. In the end, the state of New York was granted $1 million more each year to benefit the insane. No patient would ever have to go through the horrible conditions in asylums again. She fulfilled her task of saving the other women at Blackwell's Island. The medical treatment of the mentally ill patients would not be the same quality as it is today if it weren't for Bly.
My name is Nick Clooney. I'm a reporter, and we are at the museum. These young women have just asked me to address the influence of Nellie Bly on American journalism. One of the most remarkable periods of American journalism, one of the most yeasty, was the time that Nellie Bly burst onto the scene and showed that women could be at least as good and probably better as reporters than men, and not only in easy parts of the world. She was perfectly willing to take on the tough spots, and she went into awful places in our country where she did great, bold, and brave stories and blazed the way for all of the young women who right now are at least 50% of the profession of journalism in the United States. When I was first a news director, I used to hire women because first I knew they were smart, but I also knew that in those days they'd work for less money than men. Now, I'm not proud of that, but I'm proud that those young women are now news directors and now great reporters.
The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. 2 roads in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference.
Nellie Bly took the road less traveled. She removed the label that was set upon women that they were only good for cooking, cleaning, and caring for children. Bly stepped over the wall that separated women from the working world, and by taking this path, she has become an inspiration to women around the world. Through her never-ending perseverance and dedication to finding out the truth, and nothing but the truth, she shaped a path for women to follow. Not only did she leave a lasting legacy in the field of journalism, but she also showed that a woman is as good as a man in every way, and that anything is possible with determination.